Hi there. This is episode 45 of the Perrysburg podcast. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. Today's episode is an interview with Perrysburg resident Laura Winters. If you are new to this podcast, welcome. The Perrysburg podcast is an informational podcast for prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents. The prospective residents are those that are considering a move to Perrysburg, much like I was considering a move to Perrysburg back in 2006. The new Perrysburg residents just got here, much like me in 2007. And then current Perrysburg residents are anybody who has been here for longer than 1 year. That's me today. I've been here for 17 years. We talk about what's in Perrysburg and why people like to live here. You can find the show notes for this episode on perrysburgpodcast.com. Laura Winters is a Perrysburg resident, and she actually does a fantastic job introducing herself at the beginning of our interview. So stay tuned for that. But if you want to read her full bio, it is in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com. Just find episode 45 and you can read Laura's bio. Now, in the first half of our interview, after Laura introduces herself, she talks about what brought her and her husband to Perrysburg, why they like living here, what prospective, new, and current Perrysburg, Ohio residents should know about our town, and a few challenges that she's faced while living here. Now, in the second half of the interview, Laura talks about her podcast, which is called Thriving Dry Eye Podcast, and her business, which is called Your Light Holistic Therapy and Wellness LLC. She talks about her ideal client, how she helps them, and what the first appointment is like. Laura is very easy to talk to, and we had a very nice chat. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Laura Winters. Hi, Laura. Welcome to the Perrysburg podcast.
Hi, Kim. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Thank you for volunteering yourself. You're one of the first to volunteer themselves to be interviewed here on the Perrysburg podcast.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know what I'm getting myself into, but I'm excited to be here.
Glad to have you with me. All right. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
First, I'm a wife and mother. I have 3 children. They're 8, 6, and the other one turned 2 yesterday. I have a dog. And I have 2 bunnies. So I never thought I would be a pet parent to bunnies, but here we are, and they're actually pretty cute. I am a working mother and a business owner. I've slowly made my way to part-time work, which I appreciate quite a bit, and I like being home with my children. We love going to Cedar Point in the summertime, so we do that about once a week. It was funny because I grew up in Oak Harbor, and it's very close to Cedar Point, but my family never went. So now I feel like I'm living my best life being a kid again, going there, and I love the water park. So I love podcasts. I'm also a podcaster, and I really appreciate being outside. So I love the sun. I love our backyard, which is just a little place, but it's definitely a nice oasis for me.
Nice. And how long have you been in Perrysburg, you and your husband?
Yeah, so we moved here in 2010. So we've been here for 14 years.
Just a little bit less than me. I've been here for about 17 years now.
Oh, nice. Yes.
Yep. I moved in the summer, got the Perrysburg pool pass right away, got in the pool. The kids loved it there. Good stuff.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes. Thanks for telling me a little bit about yourself. I grew up in Pemberville, so just down State Route 105 from you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. But I did get to go to Cedar Point when I was growing up. In fact, with band, we would always march there and then we'd get to stay for free.
Oh, that's so nice. Yes.
Lots of fun.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Man, we had the old rides back then, though. We had, I think, the Space Needle where you could get a good view of the whole park from the top. We had the Demon Drop. These kids nowadays, they don't know what the 80s thrills were.
Right.
They have it so much better, actually.
Yeah. When I was in high school, yes, I played the French horn. And so we went just once a year, I think, with band. And my friend, I don't know how she got me on, but she got me on the Millennium Force. And It was so much fun, so amazing. And I got off and said, never again. I will never do that ever again. So I'm not a rider. And the older I've gotten, like even the ones that I do appreciate, they seem to make me sick. So I am totally fine being in kiddie world with my kids and just people watching, eating good food. So yeah.
That's all right. That can be fun too. I agree with you though. The older I have gotten, the fewer rides I can handle. I'm kind of done with the crazy ones.
hmm
The Maverick and oh my gosh, what's that one that is the race car that goes straight up and straight down? What is that thing? The Top Thrill Dragster, I think.
Yes.
Nope,
So they actually
not for
shut that
me.
down and they did the Top Thrill 2, and that is not working right now either. They just opened that this year.
That's fine. I will watch people go on it.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, there's big fun to be had in Northwest Ohio in the summer. That is for sure.
hmm
Now, at this time, you said you've been here for 14 years. What brought you and your husband to Perrysburg?
We're actually high school sweethearts, and I was going to college in Bowling Green, and he was in Toledo. And after I graduated, I got a job with a contract company that was working in Fremont and also in Toledo. So the hub of where it was going to be was in Toledo, but occasionally, like once a week, I was driving to Fremont, and he was still finishing his degree at the University of Toledo. So we were looking kind of for a middle spot for all of the places. And right down the road, I said, why don't we look for something in Perrysburg? At the time, Waterstone Landing was brand new, brand spanking new. They had a really good special at the time. We toured it and said, okay, we're going to make this work. We lived there for, I believe it was a year. As we were getting to the end of that lease, I was going around looking for a house. And at the time, my husband was like, I'm not interested right now. Like, I don't want to do the whole house thing. So I was looking. And one day I saw this sign that was kind of outside of where the Lighthouse Way is. And it was for a realtor. So I went into Ridgestone Builders and I said, is there a realtor that I can talk to about a house? And they were like, no, we build homes. And I was like, no, I get it. But like, I saw a sign out there about a realtor and they were like, well, what's your price point? And I of course went lower than what we were looking for. But I gave them a number and they were like, well, we have a house for you. And I was like, no, that's not possible. And so they showed me what they had and it was in our price range. And actually at the time, it was cheaper to build a house than it was to buy one. So I went home and I showed the papers to my husband and said, I think that we can actually build a house. And he was like, that's amazing. So we went in and met and so we built a house in Perrysburg, which we had thought we'd never do. And we've been in it ever since.
That's amazing. I did not build my house. I've never been through that experience, but you talk about it with a smile on your face, which makes me feel really good. Because if I ever do build a house in Perrysburg, I will possibly be smiling as well.
Oh, Lord. It was really an interesting process for sure. And people are like, oh, it's amazing to pick out your own carpet and your paint and everything, all the finishings. And we're like, we had just enough money to build a house. So like, they'd be like, do you want this one? Or you can pay a little extra for this one. And we're like, oh no, we'll just take the cheapest one you got, So like, even the paint on the walls, like we have been constantly updating our home, even now, every year we add or change something new. It worked out.
Yeah, it's a great community. Now
Mm-hmm.
that you're here, what would you say is your favorite thing about living in Perrysburg?
Honestly, I have to just kind of build on the house situation that we built our house. So in the subdivision, we've had neighbors come in and out. And right now, we have amazing neighbors. It's like so wonderful. I'm so thankful. And I'm sure they get frustrated with me because I text them like, I need an egg. Do you have an egg? Oh, you don't have an egg? I'm going to text the next neighbor,
I'm laughing because I've done it too.
I know. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need 1 tablespoon of baking powder. I'm totally out. Can you help me? But no, I love it so much. the kids are all around the same age. And so all of our yards kind of butt up against each other. And, in the summertime, it's literally they wake up in the morning, go outside, start playing, and, they just have such a great time. And, there are times where we go, oh, there's this going on, this going on. Is this an opportunity where we need to move or do something? And it's like, no, man, this is perfect for our children right now. This is definitely where they need to be. They need to have these experiences with these neighbors and growing up where they are in a safe community, generally safe community, and just enjoy being a kid.
It is a great place to raise a family, for sure. I second that. Now, as a mom, though, or even as a business professional, do you have a favorite thing for yourself other than for your family? Like you personally, what's your favorite thing about living in Perrysburg?
So I have two children. I had them with an OB, a different OB. And then for the third child, I was kind of going more holistic route. I changed a lot of things in terms of my thinking and what I wanted to do for pregnancy. And so I stumbled upon a new OB, and her name's Sarah Puckett, and she is in Perrysburg, but she delivers at Flower Hospital, and she's amazing. I was so thankful to have her on my team and at my side during that birth. So I totally love her. So if anybody's looking for an OB, she works her tail off and is really supportive of your decisions. And so I really love her. And then let's talk about every single day. I do really appreciate Local Roots. They have smoothies and fresh organic juices, and it's just a really great atmosphere that they have. They have this outdoor area where you can sit and relax, and I appreciate that.
That's interesting you should mention Local Roots because I just mentioned them on an episode that came out here in May. As we record this, it is May 18th, 2024. And I was talking about local honey. Apparently, you can buy local honey there at Local Roots Juice Company, right?
Yes. And
Have you ever bought some there?
I have actually. And I do believe they sell, maybe not, the bee pollen too, which I haven't purchased that, but that's another thing that's supposed to be really good for you.
I have heard that that can help with allergies, but that statement has not been tested by the FDA. It is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
I love
said
it.
the pharmacist.
Yes.
For those listening to this that don't know, I am a licensed Ohio pharmacist.
I love it.
Yeah. So I will have to go into Local Roots Juice Company and try something and buy some honey. I usually go to Nana's Local Honey there on Hull Prairie Road,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm an equal opportunity honey user. I will have to try theirs as well.
Yes, that's like the best part at the end of the smoothie because the honey that's on top has just like fallen to the bottom. And so you can really get your straw down in there, kind of sop it, just eat it up. It's really good right at the end.
Nice. You've given me something to look forward to. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Now, I want to encourage you to help people who are looking to move to Perrysburg or are brand new here, or maybe have lived here for a while and don't know what you know. So I'm going to ask you a few questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Say there's somebody who's looking to move to Perrysburg. What's something about Perrysburg that you think they should know?
The interesting thing about Perrysburg is that you can make this as big or as small as you want to be. So, as I was like preparing for this podcast, I was going, oh no, wait a second. Oh, wait. So, I reached out to my neighbors and said, what do you guys love about Perrysburg? And they kept giving me ideas. And I was like, well, I've never been there before. I've never done that before. And so it's really interesting that, I've lived here for 14 years, but I feel like to me, Perrysburg is this really small place. And it's probably because all of the things that I do is kind of probably less than other people. But Perrysburg itself can be really large and huge and have a ton of things to do. So I think that, in general, you can really make Perrysburg everything you want it to be.
I love that you crowdsourced responses because that might help anybody listening to this who's already here. Maybe they're fresh, brand new, from out of town, just moved in. Maybe they just built their house, or maybe they've been here for a while. What are some of those responses you heard from your neighbors?
Some of the things that were also on my list, but they did talk about, was the farmers market. So they're celebrating 25 years this year, and there was talks last year that it possibly was not going to come back, and it was like devastating to everybody because it's such a wonderful place to get out there, enjoy the downtown area. Some people say uptown area, I guess.
I know some of the people from yesteryear call it uptown. It will
Yes.
always be uptown. That's fine. No, no animosity. Uptown, downtown, whatever you want to call it. I know where you're at.
Exactly. But now they have a ton of food trucks. They have some places come with their vegetables or fruit. They have places that sell flowers. I mean, there's really a lot of things that you can do, and getting and walking around outside is just so beautiful. And with that too, it's right next to the library, which I very much appreciate our library. It's beautiful, it's clean, and they have this really nice area for the children where they can play. And as I was starting my podcast, I spent a lot of time in the back of the library because it was nice and quiet, which is quite different from my home.
Are you saying you recorded your podcast episodes, the first ones, from Way Public Library?
No, I actually did not, but it was all of the setup and the prep that I needed to do to get everything going.
Nice. Yeah, there is a little bit of a planning phase before you launch a podcast, isn't there?
Yeah. Yep, I did a lot of research and coordinating with people and lots of things, but it was all great.
Good. That's good info. Anything else you and your neighbors talked about that people need to know about Perrysburg?
Another neighbor was saying that it's so close to Toledo. There's so many things to do in Toledo. And I was like, okay, but we're talking about Perrysburg here. But it's true that Perrysburg is so central to so many things. So we have Ann Arbor up the road, that's an hour away. We have Detroit, if you're going to go to the airport, that's about an hour away. You have Toledo, there's a ton of things to do there. So, yeah, we are pretty central, that there's a lot of things that you can do in Perrysburg, but you can also go kind of make day trips to other places that are close around that have their own communities and flair and things like that.
Those are all good points. All good points for sure. I need to do an episode at some point about things to do in Toledo since it is so close, like the art museum, the zoo, going to all the metro parks, things like that. So one of these days I'll get to it, because when I was brand new to Perrysburg, I was actually coming from Toledo, and those were the things that I missed. Being able to go to Sofo's and buy good Italian food, that you then make homemade. For example, homemade pizzas. We did that so often, and as nice as Perrysburg is, I didn't know where to find all the same things here. Where's the Perrysburg equivalent? There's no Italian market here in Perrysburg. So anyways, to be announced, I will do an episode about Toledo stuff on the Perrysburg podcast. Coming back to thinking about my audience, all these people who may be prospective, new, or current Perrysburg, Ohio residents, what's something that you know about Perrysburg that somebody who's been here also for 14 years may not know?
One thing that they may not know about is the Buy Nothing page on Facebook. Hopefully everybody knows about this, but maybe they do not. The Buy Nothing page used to be one large group that encompassed all of Perrysburg, and I believe they broke it up into 4 different sections now because it got so big that when someone posted an item that they didn't need anymore and it's free, then everybody would comment and nobody would get anything. Only one person can get the item. So they broke it up into these different sections based on where you live. You can yourself post items that you don't necessarily need anymore in the home or wherever. And then people can comment on how they would like to use it or if it would benefit them. And then you pick somebody and then they can come to your house and pick it up. And conversely, people post things and you can comment on there. And I've gotten so many nice things that I absolutely needed that I was like, oh man, I was totally going to go buy that, but now you saved me. Other things that were so nice at my house that I was like, I don't want to throw away, but I also like, what am I going to do with this? It's so much more rewarding to give it to somebody who really needs it.
I love this answer so much. I second this answer. The Buy Nothing group is awesome. A friend of mine who lives in Cleveland actually told me about the Buy Nothing movement. And I was
Oh,
like, what is this thing? Because, on Facebook, you try to sell things, and sometimes you can just, see who among the people you're already connected to needs something. But with this Facebook group, the Buy Nothing group, you can, like you said, post something that you no longer need, and people can say, hey, I need this. And you end up having them come to your porch and pick it up, or your driveway, or hanging off of your mailbox, however you want to do it. And I've gotten rid of so many things that way. And again, thank you so much for mentioning that. There are many people like me who had been here for, I think I had been here for almost 15 or 16 years before I found out about this. And it had been around for well over 2 years.
yeah. I mean, I got this cute jacket for my daughter. It's a winter jacket. It's white. It has like white fur kind of stuff, not real fur, all over it. And she wore it to the zoo. And I was just like, oh my God, this is the best thing ever, And I never would have purchased it myself. Like I would have looked at it and been like, that is so darn cute. But no, it was a great addition to have.
Thanks again for mentioning that Buy Nothing group on Facebook. If you are listening to this and you have not checked it out, check it out today. You do have to answer some questions, with geographically where you live in Perrysburg, but yeah, you can join today. Laura, let's have you answer one more question and then we'll move on. Let's say there's somebody, this is their first day in Perrysburg. They just moved here. They've got their moving boxes out in the yard, and they're listening to this podcast and they're thinking, what now? I've got this house that I bought or built, whatever the situation is, or maybe I'm here because of work. It's the first day in town. What do they need to know? What do they need to do on their first day in Perrysburg?
So I would say, first off, put the boxes in the garage, take a break, and I would suggest that they go to Swig. Swig is an amazing restaurant. They have really, really good food, and it's very reasonably priced, and it's in that downtown/uptown area. So you get a good feel of that. And the energy at Swig is so great, and the food is so good. I already said that. But one of my really good friends from high school, he's actually the general manager there. So I didn't know about the restaurant for a long time, and I showed up and was like, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here?" And he's been there for a very long time, and it's just great. It's a great place. He runs it so well. Go to Swig, get some chicken wings, get a basket of fries, and get a beer if you want. And then once you're done there, then go home and pack your stuff away.
That sounds like a very nice break, even if it's not your first day in Perrysburg. But yeah, that sounds like a good happy ending to the first day in Perrysburg. Awesome. Thank you very much. I think that when we share our wisdom with people who are brand new here or looking to move here or who have been here, we all learn something that's good. I've learned stuff today, so thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, we're having so much fun talking about Perrysburg, but I've got to go just like a tiny little bit negative and ask about the other side of the coin. What's one thing about Perrysburg that you wish you could change?
During COVID, I was an ambassador for a medical freedom group in the area. And so it was really interesting because I came across so many passionate people, so many kind people, and all we really wanted was change for certain things. And what was interesting and what I learned from that experience was that you can do so many things, but I think Perrysburg is so large that, and some people may disagree, But I think the impact that you can have is a little bit less than what you might believe that you can. You have these big ideas, you put a group together, you try to go through the right avenues to make change, and it doesn't always happen. And so I think that if you're living in a really small town, you probably have a little bit more say in that. But as a pretty large community like Perrysburg is, then I think you have, like I said, there's a little less room for change. Though I do have to say that it has been interesting seeing this wave of change for the Perrysburg schools. So, one of the reasons that people come to Perrysburg is for these amazing schools, and they are. But I think as community members, sometimes we see some decisions that we wouldn't make in our own homes for ourselves. And so when you see extravagant changes in the schools, spending money or something like that, then there's this room for questioning. And I think that is being shown in the way that we've been voting at the polls. And so I think it does challenge them to do things a little bit different because from what I understand, we have always been a community where we continue to show up and support in all ways the schools. And I think that with the way that inflation has been and how things are, that we're all having to check ourselves on what is really important, where is money really going, and so that's been really interesting.
What I heard you say is that change is hard anyways, but when you form a group and you think you're really going to be able to make a dent in things, sometimes it doesn't happen. Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But do you feel like you're being heard?
I think that there were times yes, and I think times no. And that's okay too. I mean, that's part of the learning process, learning so many things.
I think one of the most important things just in America right now is for us all to hear both sides and to be willing to have what I call a dialogue. Instead of one person fighting to be the loudest and be heard, it's let's all hear each other's ideas. And we don't necessarily have to take action, but when we feel heard, it actually makes a difference inside. That's my personal opinion. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great point. And it does. It definitely does when your voice is heard make the difference for sure.
Thank you for sharing that. I know that I put you on the spot and asked you to share something negative. Thank you for sharing what your experience has been.
Yeah, can I also say there's two other things that I feel like need to be changed or
Sure,
that has
let's hear
been
it.
a struggle for me is that new light outside Levis Commons by like Taco Bell area, which is probably not an issue because I didn't see anybody complain about it on Facebook when it was put up. But when you live kind of on the other side of that, you hit that light every single day when it used to be like a nice, easy, smooth drive to the highway. And then also the taking away of the left turn into Mr. Freeze has been a really large learning curve. So I got it down now, but that was another thing that I was like, man, I would just really like to change that.
I love that you bring this up because I think we all have some traffic patterns that we would like to change in Perrysburg. Can I share one of mine with you?
Absolutely.
Okay. The corner of Dixie Highway and Eckel Junction Road. There is a Starbucks there behind a BP station. I believe it's called a BP station. And I feel like there are a lot of near misses, traffic accident wise, right there, because people slam on their brakes and try to turn left. So, say they're going westbound on Eckel Junction Road, just west of North Dixie Highway, and they're trying to turn left to go into the Starbucks. There is no left turn lane there. So, they have to stop traffic in the left of the two lanes. So there's two lanes that go west. The left of the two oh my golly gosh, if you're in that lane, be prepared to stop. I'm always looking for the person in front of me to stop there. I plan to have somebody stop there. If I want to just go straight easily, I pick the other lane. So that is one of those that bothers me. And also that light in general at that intersection of Echo Junction Road and North Dixie Highway, the light in the west and eastbound lanes just doesn't last very long. You can get 3, maybe 4 cars there. And if somebody's not paying attention, you're going to sit there for 2 lights instead of just 1 or more. It's a little frustrating. So, City of Perrysburg, if you are listening, consider changing the timing of those lights. Thank you. This has been a moment by Kim Newlove.
I love that.
All right. Yeah, we're all human. We have pet peeves, right? So why not air them out a little bit?
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel better when I am heard. And that's kind of related to that comment that I just said. Sometimes we form groups and we try to change things. And even though we may fail because we don't get the outcome that we desire, it does make a difference when we feel heard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe I'll do a podcast episode on annoying intersections in Perrysburg someday. I think people might tune in for that.
I think so.
Yeah, either that or they'll get some tomatoes at the farmer's market and throw them at my house. We will see. All right, let's move on. I've got one last question that I would like to ask, just one last question. And it's kind of like an open mic moment. You are a Perrysburg resident, business owner, podcaster. I think you're an interesting person, Laura. I would like to open it up and say, if you would like to share a couple of things that you would like my audience to know about you, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First, I'd like to talk about my podcast. It's called Thriving Dry Eye. And I started this after I had a work-related injury to my eyes. And it was actually the 3-year anniversary of that I launched it. So actually, I believe May 19th would be the 4-year anniversary of that. So my podcast has been out for a year. And
congrats.
Thank you. And so on the Thriving Dry Eye podcast, I talk to guests who also suffer from dry eye disease. And I talk with health professionals who can help with dry eye patients and actually healing your eyes. So it's been really a blessing to be able to get my story out. There was a lot of trauma associated with the incident. And so to be able to, like we've said, be heard and tell our story is so important. So it started with me being able to tell my story and then allow other people to tell their story, because there's a lot of emotions and trauma that go along with dry eye disease. Most people think like just put some drops in your eyes and you're going to be fine. But that is actually far from the truth. And so being able to allow other people to tell their story, what's working for them, what hasn't worked for them, it's also healing for a lot of people. I really do love podcasting and I love talking to people. It's funny being on the other side of the mic at this point.
You're doing great, Laura. Really doing great.
Thank you. So if you know anyone with dry eye disease or you suffer yourself, I would encourage you to listen to it. That also led me further along my journey, which led to me opening up a private practice where I didn't say this before. I'm a speech language pathologist. And so I've been practicing since 2010. About 10 years ago, I started working with patients with dementia. It has been so beautiful and wonderful. I currently work in home health. So I go into people's homes, which is just the best because you're able to see how people really live their lives and be able to coordinate with families. And it has really opened my eyes to the way people live. And it's so different sometimes from, especially Perrysburg, going downtown Toledo sometimes. It's been beautiful because I honestly find that the people who live in the yuckiest houses or the most broken down houses are the most beautiful people I've ever met. So there's that. But have always wanted to start my own private practice, but I never knew what the thing was. So last year I went to a training called the Gillespie Approach, Craniosacral Fascial Therapy, which is also known as CFT. And it's a hands-on treatment, very gentle, kind of like craniosacral therapy, but a little bit different.
Laura, is that a massage therapy for anybody listening who's unfamiliar with that?
So massage therapists do craniosacral therapy, so do physical therapists. As a speech therapist, we do fascial modalities for our treatment also. So this could be helpful in the speech therapy world for people who have problems with their voice, problems swallowing, problems with their thinking and memory.
Are you putting your hands on people when you do this therapy?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Great. Just so my listeners have an idea of what it looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. So they lay on a table and I put my hands on them, I start at the head and then work around the body in order to unwind fascial strain that we have in the body. That's where our physical and emotional traumas are all stored. And so when the fascia unwinds, it helps to release these traumas. So it can help with so many things, but yes, I'm primarily focusing on things for speech. I found that this is very helpful and it's indicated for brain health and nervous system regulation. So, nervous system regulation is so important for everybody. As a working mom, a mom of 3, there was a time where I was continually in fight or flight. And I didn't realize it because that's where my homeostasis was in fight or flight. And so with modalities like the CFT and other things, then you can get your nervous system regulated and be able to have a clear mind for your thinking. I'm really excited to bridge this gap and to be more active in the community to help people with their cognition, to help people with their thinking and memory. This is something a little bit different from what they're normally used to. But I also do feel in general that, and from what I've seen in my work, is that a lot of times the doctor will give you this diagnosis and say, okay, go home. And there's a lot of questions. So typically, I don't see someone who is diagnosed with dementia until they're later in the game. I think that there's a lot of missed opportunities for healing. I'm excited to be able to try to educate and bridge this gap so that we're not letting things progress so far and trying to facilitate healing early on in the process.
Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like you have an ideal client in mind, and perhaps you could share how somebody could work with you as well.
Honestly, it's really helpful for everybody, but my ideal client at this point is someone who's really open to healing, someone who's open to something that might be considered unconventional, and really believing that their body has the ability to heal. So one of the first steps that I found with healing is that you actually have to believe that you can heal. So some people think I have this chronic illness, it's going to be there forever, and it may be, but there's also a group of people who think that it may be there, but I can get to a point where I feel like I've healed from that. And that's where I am with my eyes. Most people in the dry eye community will say it's a chronic illness. You're going to have it for the rest of your life. And there are days where it goes by where I don't even think about my eyes. So for somebody that may be this feeling of chronic illness, that it's always there, but for someone else, it may be I've actually healed that because I don't think about it for days at a time. I would love to be able to help patients with dementia, people with dementia. I feel that there is opportunity for healing and for being able to accomplish a really great life with that diagnosis, I guess. Like I say, I see people who are kind of later in the game and the things that we do with conventional speech therapy, they are helpful, but a lot of times it's compensation. We want to hit things early on. With craniosacral fascial therapy, what we're trying to do is allow the brain to breathe. So if we're providing this movement of cerebrospinal fluid to the brain, then I think there's opportunity for the brain to kind of wake up and say, okay, this is what we need to be doing again.
What's the before and after for somebody who, let's pick your dementia client. Say somebody's early in the game. For example, my grandma back in 2007, she had Alzheimer's disease. When she was first diagnosed, she still had the ability to walk, talk, eat, swallow, all the things. Recall details that were from yesteryear, but still long-term memory, super good. So for somebody like her who's early in her Alzheimer's journey, what would you say the before and after would be for someone like her?
This is kind of a new space with craniosacral fascial therapy. I'm just going to be honest. When I was there at the training, this completely clicked and made sense for me. And so a lot of the providers who do CFT really focus on babies. And so their goal is to set up a baby for hopefully less illness, less disease their entire life to unwind any birth trauma that may happen. While I do think that that is beautiful work and it's so powerful, I also believe that adults should not be left behind in this. And so, because nervous system regulation is so important for our body to function properly and also our brain health, that's where I feel like there's this huge indicator for adults and people with dementia. So, my goal would be for whatever problems they're having to either improve a little bit or to slow the decline. You know, in traditional speech therapy, if we can get early, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to slow the decline of the disease process. They may say it would take 5 to 10 years, but maybe we're trying to push that out even further. It's really hard to say at this point. Everybody's different. And this is something I believe can be helpful and believe can work, but it's not fully tested. It's not researched. So, there are those things.
It's a complementary and alternative therapy, right? Can we agree on that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I'm a pharmacist and I'm in Western medicine, and I always think about the before and after because we like a transformation. For example, if someone has high blood pressure, they go on a medication and suddenly their blood pressure is within range. That's the sort of clear-cut thing that we always look for, and I think everybody can appreciate that type of a transformation. So when I ask about the before and after, what you're saying is if my grandma had started craniofacial therapy, CFT, back in 2007, it may have slowed the progression of her disease, but we'll never know because she didn't try it.
Correct.
And she did end up only living, I think, 5 years with her diagnosis of Alzheimer's. So we really will never know. She is no longer with us. But sometimes people need hope. And this is one of those therapies with an incurable disease like Alzheimer's that could possibly give hope, slow progression of disease, and also put them, the patient, in touch with somebody like you who's also a speech therapist who can kind of see some other things possibly happening and comment on them. So I think we all know that we become the caregivers when there's somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's in their lives. And having a relationship with somebody who can see the decline and be experienced in seeing the decline can also be helpful. We're a team. I mean, if you don't have anybody else on your healthcare team, when you've got somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's, you're in trouble. So you definitely need to have somebody following your patient. I hope I didn't go off on too much of a tangent, but I just want to say that I don't know much about CFT, but I can see the value. And I know my grandma is no longer with us, but I would have been open to that. Is it like a monthly appointment, a quarterly appointment? Like, how does that work?
So everybody's different. At that first appointment, it's 2 hours long, which seems like a really long time, but I do an intake of your history. I also do some cognitive tests because I want to know where is your brain health right now. And that gives us a baseline. Then I leave the last hour to complete a full treatment. Typically, in the normal therapy world, you go in for an evaluation, they just gather all this data, and then the next time is when you start. But I thought that it was so important for someone coming in their first time to be able to actually experience and see what it feels like. And then you can make your decision where to go from there. In the world of CFT and what they provided at the training was that people would start twice a week and then go down to once a week and then taper off. I don't know how realistic that is for my clients. So I have been working with some clients once a week and it seems to be working really well. Ideally, for me and what I have kind of created for my practice here is that I find that most people are going to feel the best benefit from everything in an average of 5 treatments. There is someone who's about 2 hours north and someone who's about 2 hours south. And so one day I was like, oh man, I just really need a session. And I reached out to the lady I knew and I drove up there the next day and I did a treatment and I felt so good. And so a lot of people have asked, is this something where I can do on a regular basis to keep my body regulated and in check? And absolutely you can.
Okay, so it sounds like there's an initial visit once weekly for 5 visits, and then maintenance on whatever schedule makes you feel good. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I like to learn, and this is definitely new for me. So thank you for being patient and answering my questions. As a medical professional, I don't know a lot about these non Western techniques, but I do think they're important for people who need them and who have, let me just say, possibly failed traditional Western medicine. Is this something that you have perhaps had patients come to you for when they've failed other treatments for anxiety or other dementia treatments?
Yeah, so at this point, I'm fairly new in my practice but for the people that I've presented it to, it's like a kind of a last resort kind of thing. Like I've tried the meds, I've tried this, I've tried that, and nothing seems to be working. At some point, it's like I want my life to be better. Even in my health journey, man, I went to some places I never thought I would in terms of the treatments or the modalities or whatever. And I did find healing. So for me, it was beneficial. But there is that place where you get to where I just want something to help me.
Thank you for sharing that. For anybody who wants to come to you for some help, how do they make an appointment?
Yeah, so I didn't actually say the name of my practice. It is called Your Light Holistic Therapy and Wellness, LLC. You can email me at it's Laura at yourlightllc.com. And you can also check out my website, which is yourlightllc.com. I also have a Facebook page and an Instagram page, which is all the Your Light LLC. That's where all the information is. If you reach out to me, I am a very much like just answer questions kind of person. There's no strings attached, nothing like that. So if you do have questions and would like a consultation, then that's an option also.
Or if you're the child of somebody who has dementia and you would like to make an appointment for your parent who you take care of. Yeah, you could definitely contact Laura as well. I'll have all the contact information in the show notes on perrysburgpodcast.com because Laura is spelled more than one way. It is Laura. That's this Laura that we're talking to today.
Thank you, Kim.
Yeah, absolutely. I am very lucky. I have the shortest name in the world and it's very easy to spell. But not everybody has that that same coincidence. My son Derek is, God bless him, it's Derrick. There's about 10 different ways to spell his name. So I feel you, Laura. I feel you.
Yeah, it's funny because my maiden name was so long that I would always have to spell that and I wouldn't spell my first name. Now my last name is super easy, so I always spell my first name just to make sure that they get that right.
Yep, I feel you. You got to make sure because you want those emails from people. You would like to help people. I can tell. Yeah. Well, Laura, as we start to wrap this up, is there anything else you would like to share?
No, I'm just really thankful for this opportunity and I'm thankful for the community of Perrysburg. I love where we live. I love the people around us and I love the parks. We didn't talk about those, but there's a lot of parks that are great. And I love the ice cream places and the restaurants. And it's so bad that Costco is just like a mile and a half down the road for me because I'm at Costco all the time. So
You probably get one of those rebate checks every year, don't you?
Oh God, it's so large. And the guy's always like, oh my gosh. I'm like, okay, don't even, I know it's so bad. Don't even comment, please.
We love our local Costco too. We're with you on that. You mentioned the parks, and I wanted to comment on one other thing that you had said. I can't remember
The
what it
ice cream
was. Oh, ice
places.
cream. Yes. I got to ask, what's your favorite ice cream shop here in Perrysburg?
You know what's really funny is last summer I was very much like I want to try all these restaurants and I was like, oh, with 5 kids it's so expensive, or excuse me, 3 kids, a family of 5, too expensive. So we went on a journey of all these different ice cream places all around. So at this point, we do some rotation. So last night for my daughter's birthday, we went to Lola's and I told the kids before we went in, please, I do not want to spend $20 on ice cream. And in fact, it came to $19 and I was like, oh, I guess it's under 20. But then we do Mr. Freeze and Twisty Treats. So we go all over.
Very good. I think we like them all. We are an equal opportunity ice cream parlor family ourselves here at the New Love House. But yeah, there are some great ice cream shops here in Perrysburg. Thanks for sharing that. That is a happy note to end on. Laura, thank you so much for being here on the Perrysburg podcast.
Thank you so much, Kim.
Thanks again to Laura Winters for being my guest today on the Perrysburg podcast, episode 45. I enjoyed hearing about what brought her and her husband to Perrysburg, why she and her family like living here today, her advice for prospective new and current residents, challenges that she's faced, her podcast, and her business. We covered a lot in our interview today. Now, I'm a pharmacist by training, and I gotta say, I really liked that second half of the interview. I liked hearing about how Laura helps her clients, especially given her background as a speech language pathologist. If you are curious if and how Laura could help you, click the link to her website in the show notes for episode 45 of the Perrysburg podcast and reach out to Laura today. If you're interested in being on the Perrysburg podcast to share what brought you to town, why you like living here, and what you think other people should know about our town, please contact me. My email address is kim@perrysburgpodcast.com. I look forward to interviewing more Perrysburg residents on the podcast this year. Thank you for listening to episode 45 of the Perrysburg podcast. Please visit perrysburgpodcast.com to read the show notes. In the show notes today, you'll find a link to Laura's podcast, which again is called Thriving Dry Eye Podcast, her business, which again is called Your Light Holistic Therapy and Wellness, LLC, Laura's social media links, the link to sign up for the Perrysburg Podcast's weekly newsletter, and more. Lots of links today. Everything you need is on perrysburgpodcast.com. If you know someone who might like this episode, please share it with them. And if you like this podcast, please subscribe to or follow the Perrysburg podcast on your favorite podcast player and YouTube to get each new episode right when it comes out. Thanks for listening today. I'll talk to you next week.